Shalom all, we come on to book 7 of our Genesis to Revelations daily study. We are on Judges chapters 1 to 4. In these chapters we shall see the continued conquest of Canaan, the failure to complete the clearing out of the previous inhabitants, the death of Joshua, and Israel's unfaithfulness. Once these generations died, they depart from Yahweh, and he sold them into slavery a number of times, as Deuteronomy 28 says would happen. Do you remember you are to read the whole chapters for yourself? I'm just drawing some observations for you. Reading from Judges chapters 1 verse 1. Now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel, the whole group, asked Yahweh, saying, Who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them? And Yahweh said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon his brother, Come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with you into thy lot. So Simeon went with him, and Judah went up, and Yahweh delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they slew of them Bezek 10,000 men, and they found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adoni-Bezek fled, and they pursued after him, and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. And Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table, as I have done. So God hath requited me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. Verse 19. And Yahweh was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valleys, because they had chariots of iron. And they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. Now note when it says the children of Benjamin, it also includes the servants, because obviously you're not going to leave the servants at home while you go and fight battles and get killed. So the servants, the whole household goes into battle like they did with Abraham and his trained men. So the children of Benjamin or Judah or whoever means the whole household. Verse 27. Neither did Manasseh drive out inhabitants of Bethshean and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ablim and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns. But the Canaanites would dwell in that land. Jumping on to chapter 2, you've got the idea of chapter 1. Israel's disobedience. And the angel of Yahweh came up from Gilgal of Bokim, and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you into the land which I swore unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land, and you shall throw down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be as near unto you. Verse 7. And the people served Yahweh all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of Yahweh that he did for Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of Yahweh, died being 110 years old. Verse 10. And also all the generations were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose arose another generation after them, which knew not Yahweh, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel, the whole congregation, let's say, did evil in the sight of Yahweh and served Baalim. And they forsook Yahweh God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked Yahweh to anger. And they forsook Yahweh and served Baal and Ashtaroth, and the anger of Yahweh was hot against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of spoilers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies.
Was Egypt, from where they came, not round about them? So is it not possible they went into Egypt again and were sold to their enemies, as Deuteronomy 28 says? As I have said previously, ships were the main means of transporting cargo and humans in that time. So we do not have to wait until the 16th century to say that Deuteronomy 28 was being fulfilled then. It was happening way before then. Okay, continuing from chapter 2, verse 16.
So notice they were sold long before the 16th century. Continuing from verse 16, where God raises up judges. Nevertheless, Yahweh raised up judges which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of Yahweh, but they did not so. And when Yahweh raised them up judges, then Yahweh was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For he repented Yahweh because of their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, in following other gods to serve them and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from their own doings, nor from their stubborn way. So again, note verse 14. They were sold into slavery long before the 16th century of European and USA slave trade, just as Deuteronomy 28 warned. Okay, here we go again. Israel are rightly called children because as children they have short memories when the pain of punishment for former acts has worn off. 2 Peter 2:22. But it happened unto them according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his vomit again, and the sow, the pig, that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. So Israel keeps returning to sinning against God, not keep his commandments. From our study so far, we should remember all the warnings God gave them, not to mix with other nations, nor even inquire of their religious system and practices. They were to keep to the terms of the covenant, or be cursed, etc., as in Leviticus chapters 26, verse 28. Note how God constantly, in accordance with his warnings, punished them for disobedience for not keeping his laws. Then ask yourself, would he really not punish those today for doing the same thing, i.e. disobedience to his laws? Would that not be unfair to Israel of Old Testament times, especially when they are the ones who are the seed of Abraham, who was a faithful servant to him? In other words, Christians today think that they cannot keep God's laws and be blessed, when the Bible shows you how Israel was punished severely for doing disobedience to his laws. Okay, chapter 3, verse 1. Now these are the nations which Yahweh left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof, namely 5 laws of the Philistines and all the Canaanites and the Sidonians and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal-Hermon unto the entering of Hamath. And they were to prove Israel by them to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of Yahweh, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. So, God did things to prove them. Would you have passed God's test? And would you pass God's test today? Proving yourself faithful to keeping all his commandments, being worthy of his blessings? Or have you succumbed to the practices of the pagan nations as keeping Mother's Days and Father's Days and Easters and Xmasses? How many of you will be celebrating these things and following excuses as, oh, it is good to acknowledge parents on a day, or it is good to keep Easter to celebrate Jesus' death, or Christmas for his birth, etc. You can honour your parent on any other day or season, but not the one specifically of a pagan tradition to a pagan religion, i.e. Mother's and Father's Day. Search the internet or YouTube for the pagan connection and origins of these periods, Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, and so on. God's holy days, as I keep saying, is in Leviticus chapter 23. They are Passover and so on. And Passover is not the same as Easter, which is to the god Ishtar. Galatians chapter 6 verse 7. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man soweth, that shall he reap. So, if you show disobedience, you will reap the consequences that God states comes with disobedience. Continuing in chapter 3 verse 6. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and forgot Yahweh their God, and served Baalim and the groves. Therefore the anger of Yahweh was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of the Cusharish-Nethims, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Cusharish-Nethims 8 years. We do not have the excuses of having short memories, nor we didn't have Moses or Joshua to lead us. We have the recorded history in the Bible, and we can instantly go back and read the events of Balaam and Balak, for example, so that we don't forget. We can very easily read these things to keep them in our minds. And note, they are sold again for a period of 8 years this time. Read on from chapters 3 verse 9. And when the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh, Yahweh raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. Verse 11. And the land had rest 40 years, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of Yahweh. Verse 14. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 8 years. But when the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh, Yahweh raised them up a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera. Verse 13. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. And after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel. Chapter 4, verse 1. And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of Yahweh when Ehud was dead. And Yahweh sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lephidoth, she judged Israel at that time. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramath and Bethiel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Abimanom, out of Kishdish Naphtali, and said unto him, Have not Yahweh God of Israel commanded, saying, Go and draw towards Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and the children of Zebulun, and I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thy hand. And Barak said unto her, If thou wilt go with me, then will I go, but if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. Verse 14. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up, for this is the day in which Yahweh hath delivered Sisera into thy hand. Is not Yahweh gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. And Yahweh discomfited Sisera and all his chariots and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. Continue to read the story. It's interesting. Part 1. Jump to verse 21. Then Jael, Eber's wife, took a nail of the tent and took a hammer in her hand and went softly unto him and smote the nail into his temples and fastened it into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. Verse 23. So God subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Israel. Verse 24. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan until they had destroyed Jabin king of Canaan. So, are you getting the pattern? Disobedience brings consequences as slavery. The extreme importance of keeping these laws of God are shown. His long-suffering and merciful nature to his chosen congregation, called the children of Israel, they're not called Hebrews, is also shown. Of whom he says in Isaiah 49:15, Can a woman forget her suckling child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. Behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands. Thy wars are continually before me. So that is how God regards Israel, the descendants of Abraham. So he's not going to forget them in the New Testament and change to a new group of Gentiles who that comes out come to him and call themselves Christians. Deuteronomy chapters 4:31. For Yahweh thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers which he sware unto thee. Deuteronomy 8:5. Thou shalt also consider in thy heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so Yahweh thy God chastiseth thee. So these are verses to show you God's love for this congregation of Israel. Revelations 3:19. As many as I have loved, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous therefore and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have a right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates of the city. So we have to overcome, we have to do all the things that it says, especially keeping the commandments, to have a right to the gates of the city. Gentiles do not have a more lenient way than this chosen Israel, or who we're reading about, but they have to be grafted into that same way, not have a different way or more lenient way. Romans chapter 15 verse 18. For I will not dare to speak of any of those things which Christ hath made of, not wrought by me, to make the Gentiles obedient by word and deed. That was the purpose of Paul's teaching, not to give them some new way of salvation. So in these 4 chapters we have seen them sold into slavery 3 times. How many more before the New Testament times? These are the results of Deuteronomy 28, not the 16th century claimed events, as some people use them to make a distinction between who are the real Jews and who are impostors. Shalom, until tomorrow, God willing.